Deep underground, there's a machine designed to recreate the conditions from the very beginning of the universe. It stretches 27 kilometers beneath the surface, and what happens inside it isn't always easy to understand. So I went there to see it for myself.
Today I'm visiting CERN with Troels Petersen, who is like one of the biggest particle scientists in the world.
I am a scientist working here at CERN, the particle physics laboratory of the world. I work on the ATLAS experiment, and it's situated by this enormous accelerator that goes 27 kilometers underground, accelerating particles to nearly the speed of light. This allows us to explore what the universe is made of and how it came to be. Welcome to CERN. This is a fantastic place.
Quite incredible walking these old hallways where all these big scientists through the history has been going. Really feel the spirit in this old wood.
2/3 of all Nobel Prize winners post-Second World War has been here. And all discoveries are presented here.
So basically they came from the lab, made some discoveries, made a report about it, and then they came here to present it for the first time to the world.
This was where the discovery of the Higgs particle was made.
So what is the Higgs particle actually?
So the Higgs particle, I would say, is the final foundation stone in what we call the Standard Model, which is the model for what are everything built of and what's the law that makes quarks stick together into protons, and why do things decay, and why does it end the way it does. It plays a super central role, and it was predicted almost 50 years ago. Nobody knew if it existed, and it was so technically hard to build an accelerator that could produce it and detectors that could see it. It took almost 50 years, but CERN did it.
Like, why wouldn't you be able to do it in a small, why does it have to be like a huge...
You want to create particles of a high mass, then you need to come with a lot of energy. And that requires a large accelerator. And not only that, but it's only 1 out of 10,000 billion collisions that creates a Higgs particle, according to the theory, if it exists at all. Not only do you need to get it to run at high energy, but you need to have it run at high intensity.
Wow.
So let's sneak through the... let's go into some of the underground facilities. Here is the retina scanner, so that if you need to enter, they want to make damn sure you are who you are.
So this is the entrance to what?
This is the entrance to some of the experimental areas where there's, for example, radiation or things like that. Just like in Angels and Demons, where somebody steals an eye socket to enter a facility. I don't want you to be able to sort of cheat your way in.
Could I get in if I wanted to?
Yeah, by taking 10 years education, be hired by CERN. So here you see some of the external control rooms. These are backup control rooms in case the main control room fails. Here is
here we can see
all the accelerators.
There's the LHC, which is like the very big one, 27 kilometers, right?
Yeah. So we're down by these Linux and the Lear, and then it's sent over into this accelerator, and then sent over to this accelerator, and in the end, each way around into the LHC accelerator. So CERN is Lord of the Rings, you could say. LHC runs beyond wildest dreams and designs. It's really is delivering. I think people felt it will discover the Higgs particle if it exists, but nobody knew it was going to be so fast.
Can you say a little bit about what's coming up? What are you guys talking about? Or is it a secret?
The wildest idea is to build another one, which is about 90 kilometers. It still costs money, right? And then you have to ask, is it worthwhile, and what design should you do, and what size? And it would be bigger, so it curves less, so you can have higher energy. And you also put better magnets in, so you can have even higher energy.
You're gonna build it here, so it connects with all the other things.
So then you use the LHC as the pre-accelerator, and then from LHC send it out.
The big one right now is just gonna be the accelerator for the even bigger one. So we're going into the radiation area right now, but Troels is saying that it's not a lot, so I'm gonna trust him here.
I have a dosimeter, so we can know how much it is. Here is an accelerator. You see the orange parts? That's magnets.
So the orange here.
Yeah. You have a beam coming in that then goes around, and each straight part, you put 0 volts and 100 volts. And then if you're a charged particle, you sort of get pulled, you get accelerated. And then you turn, you accelerate, you turn, and you repeat that until you have the maximum energy that the magnets can bend. And then you send it on to the next accelerator.
And the results, when they come in, it's basically just numbers in a computer, I guess.
It's a piece of material that gets hit by a particle that knocks out something such that it triggers electronics that decides, is this important enough? And if it is, it gets read out and then stored and put down on computers.
But it's Nobel Prizes are being made from the numbers in the computer, right? Like the analysis of all the...
Yes.
Wow. I feel like I'm walking around in a spy film from the 70s. Wooden doors and...
Endless corridors of...
endless corridors, and you cannot find your way around.
It's the oldest building keeping the highest of tech. And you might say, okay, but why don't you build some nicer buildings? Well, you have a certain amount of money. And now the question is, do you want a shitty experiment in a nice building, or do you want a nice experiment in a shitty building? Driven by passion for fantastic experiments that actually get results that change our understanding of the universe, we live in shitty buildings.
But I mean, if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
That is one of the small magnets in the Atlas experiment. You can imagine you accelerate particles up, they collide in the middle, produce Higgs particles or new unknown particles, and then all the debris goes all the way out through the detector, are recorded, and then we sort of assemble this backward and say what happened in this collision.
Okay, so visitors are normally not allowed in here. This is where the real work is getting done. Of course, we need to.
Yeah, so this is the Atlas control room. So this is where we control the detector and monitor that everything goes right. See that the data quality is good enough. At all times, there are quite a few persons on shift here. So we all contribute to shifts day and night when the accelerator is running to take data. You can see things are green, so the detector is running well.
Green is always a good sign.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of different languages around the corridors here.
This is the Tower of Babel. This is where all languages are spoken. So let's go in and see what some of these detectors actually look like up close.
Let's go. Wow, look at all this. Wow, a lot of computers and stuff. I just had to film all the cables and stuff.
Cables and whatnot.
There's another.
No, it's not
Yeah.
There's cities on there.
Here, old one. I think this one.
So actually here we have what is the real detector. This is what Atlas, some places, looks like inside. So imagine this enormous detector. It has different layers, and this is one of the layers. Once you put things inside the Atlas detector, they're there for good. They're really hard to exchange. It's like sending things into space. And it consists of fine straws. They're 4 millimeters across. And inside they have a special gas. And in the middle, they have a thin wire, much thinner than a hair, coated with gold, single atomic layer drifted on to make them as uniform as possible. And then you put 1,200 volts on that, so really high voltage. And if a charged particle passes through, it rips off the electrons of the gas inside, and then the remains start drifting towards the high voltage thread in the middle. And because it's so thin, it starts making an avalanche, and hence a lot of electrons will hit that wire and make a signal out here.
The data comes here out in these.
Yeah. It's being read out here.
And so this makes it possible to go into the computer. Yeah. All the data is just coming from here.
Yeah. And this is considered one of the low number of detector parts. And so the collisions would happen about here. But then they're small and close to the detector, all the way to a few centimeters away, but all the way to 12 meters away and 22 meters at the distance. Here on this drawing, you get an idea of what the detector looks like. So we looked at one of these wheels around, and so the wheels are sitting down this way. Particles come in here and collide, and as they run through, you can see these tracks leave marks like bing, bing, bing on a row. And because of the magnet we saw outside, they bend, so we can know how much momentum, how much sort of punch they have in them. And so this is the inner part. This is called the inner detector. Outside, much larger scale, are calorimeters and muon spectrometers and all sorts of other detectors.
What are you working on now to like get different data and stuff like that?
Good question. We have many ideas of particles we haven't seen. We don't know if they're there. Just like with the Higgs particle, we don't know if they're there. But if we don't look, certainly we won't discover them. But if you think finding the Higgs is hard, finding the di-Higgs events, that's super hard. That's what we're going for. But we're the only ones who can decide.
Funny enough, there's no one else in the world actually that does this. I mean, unless there's some super high-tech military facility somewhere where they do.
No. We would know about that, I would say. Unless there are other civilizations that are way ahead of us.
A lot of people are talking about that we have visitors who's like
We have no visitors. That's insane.
You don't believe there's visitors?
No, but the universe is extremely big. And it's made of the same elements as here. And now we know that there are not just stars out there, tons of them, but there are planets, even Earth-like planets. So it would be strange if life didn't emerge other places in the universe. Maybe way ahead of us now. The problem is that the same grandeur that made it possible to have life emerge multiple places in the universe is the same grandeur that condemned all of us to live in isolation forever. Because it's so damn impossible to travel or even send signals across those vast distances. But they too have to adhere to the laws of physics, and they too cannot travel faster than the speed of light. They are limited by the same materials and the same laws of physics, and hence that's why they're not superior here and can travel in time and travel across galaxies and so on.
What if you one day had the big collider and you experienced something that bended the rules of physics?
There's tons of science fiction on that, but I mean, there's no evidence whatsoever, and I give it slim to none.
Troels is not an alien guy, that's for sure.
I am, just not around here. Thanks.
Wow. So all this tech, all this wiring is just in the end to produce particles that can be observed, that goes into a computer, that tells something about our universe. This is just water cooling for all the processing that is going on. So because it produces so much heat, so CERN has these big water pumps to just cool everything down. Very cool. Okay, here is my ride. When you just look at the outside, you wouldn't think this is CERN. It just looks like a regular industrial area, actually. Like, it's not flashy or anything at all. But when you get beneath the Earth, the magic happens. It's like an old James Bond facility, you know. Everything is underground. All right, Troels, thank you so much for the tour.
No, it was a pleasure. It is a fantastic place. And it's not just a place of particle physics research in itself. Sure, we discover new particles and measure things regarding how the universe came to be, but it's also a place where new technologies are invented, where people are educated, and where whole new inventions come about. Medical tech has a lot of that, but I think the greatest one is the World Wide Web. This was born here at CERN, and in fact, these two offices right here.
The World Wide Web was invented in here.
So Tim Berners-Lee, he put down a computer in this room that he called a server, and then he drilled a hole through these thin walls and put a browser on the other side, and then he could search another computer at a distance with images and hyperlinks and so on. Things that we take totally for granted.
That's amazing.
He was the one who had the vision.
Birth is right here of the whole World Wide Web. That's amazing.
This is where the web was born, and let's see what the future brings with new larger accelerators, new discoveries, and new technologies.
This place has been absolutely amazing to visit. Like, the science that's been produced here through the years has just been absolutely incredible. And having Troels actually showing us around, he's been working here for 27 years. It's quite incredible, and I've definitely learned a lot, and I hope you did as well. So see you in the next one.